So hello everyone, in this video we'll talk about TypeScript. What is actually TypeScript? And we are starting a new course on TypeScript, and in the future videos we'll definitely learn about TypeScript in detail. So let's start the lesson. So first question is, what is TypeScript actually? So TypeScript is a strongly typed object-oriented compiled language. It was designed by Anders Hejlsberg, who is a designer of C# at Microsoft. So TypeScript is actually built by Anders Hejlsberg at Microsoft. TypeScript is both a language and a set of tools, which means that it is a language as well as it provides some set of tools which we can use in JavaScript. TypeScript is a typed superset of JavaScript compiled to JavaScript. So it is actually a superset of JavaScript, which means that it is just a JavaScript code, but it has some additional benefits or additional features. So that is TypeScript actually. So in other words, TypeScript is JavaScript plus some additional features. So that is TypeScript. Features of TypeScript. So let's understand what are the features of TypeScript, and by the features we can understand how powerful TypeScript is. So TypeScript is just JavaScript. So first feature is that it is only a JavaScript language. So you can consider a JavaScript code similar to TypeScript. If you change the file name, so it is TypeScript. So JavaScript is nothing but a JavaScript. TypeScript starts with JavaScript and ends with JavaScript. So it is all the JavaScript there. TypeScript adopts the basic building blocks of your program from JavaScript. So basic building block, whatever you have defined your business logic or anything that you have defined in your JavaScript will be similarly applied in TypeScript as well. Hence, you only need to know JavaScript to use TypeScript. So you need to know only JavaScript and some object-oriented concepts to understand this TypeScript language. All TypeScript code is converted into its JavaScript equivalent for the purpose of execution, which means whenever we compile the TypeScript code, that is actually converted into JavaScript first, and then that is executed on any platform where we are using TypeScript. So TypeScript supports other JavaScript libraries, which means it can we can use all the JavaScript libraries inside TypeScript as well. So whatever are they, for example, Angular, Next.js, React.js, we can use that with TypeScript as well. So compiled TypeScript can be consumed from any JavaScript code. TypeScript generated JavaScript can reuse all of the existing JavaScript frameworks, tools, and libraries. So any library, tool, or framework, we can use that in TypeScript as well. So features of TypeScript. So the features, other features which we like the two features which we discussed. Other than that, there are also some features, which is JavaScript is TypeScript, which means JavaScript is also a TypeScript language. If you change that .js file into .ts, then we can also compile that JavaScript code or that same JavaScript code into TypeScript files. So TypeScript is portable, which means that it can be reused in it can be used in any browser, any device, or any operating system, and it can run on any environment that JavaScript runs on. So unlike its counterparts, TypeScript doesn't need a dedicated virtual machine or a specific runtime environment to execute. So if we like see other languages, so they are language dependent, and some language dependent environments are used there to run that specific language. But TypeScript is different. We can use on any operating system, on any browser or any device. So we have liberty to that. So why should we use TypeScript actually? So the TypeScript should be used for the compilation, like the compilation it provides. So let's understand the compilation of a JavaScript language. So JavaScript is an interpreted language, which means that it runs the code line by line, and if any error happens, then it gives that error without giving you the output. So hence it needs to be run to test that it is valid. It means you write all the codes just to find no output. in case there is an error. So if you have any error, so you will not be having any output, you will just be having that error. Hence, you have to spend hours to trying to find bugs in the code. The TypeScript transpiler provides the error checking feature. So it has that error checking feature. TypeScript will compile the code and generate compilation errors if it finds some sort of syntax error. So it will compile all your code and generate compilation errors, which you generally see in high level languages like Java and C++. So that kind of compilation happens in TypeScript actually. So if it will also give you syntax errors if there are any. This helps to highlight errors before the script is run. So it helps in that, like it helps to highlight the errors if the errors are there. And before the script is run, we can highlight the errors where are they and what kind of errors they are. So the other like benefit of TypeScript is strong static typing. It provides strong static typing, which means JavaScript. First, we need to understand the JavaScript and the drawbacks of JavaScript. Like JavaScript doesn't have strongly typed feature, so strong type feature or strong static typing feature is not available in JavaScript. We cannot declare any variable with the type. We just write var and const and then we assign the value with any type of variable or the data. But TypeScript is a little bit different. It has some optional static typing and a type inference system through the TLS, which takes care uh, the variable typing or the type of a variable when there are no type is provided. So then TLS will take effect. And if you have provided the type like string or anything, then it will take that type uh, and store that type of data inside that. So that is its features. It has strong static typing. So that's why the name TypeScript is derived. You can think of that. So TypeScript supports type definition, which means that it has some additional files other than .ts. It has .d.ts, which means it has these files. You can consider these files as header files, which you normally see in C, C++, or other languages. These header files contain some definitions of libraries which are already there. So we can define these definition in TypeScript inside these kind of files like .d.ts. So we have these definition files. You can consider that. So it has some code which defines the external JavaScript libraries. So that helps in our TypeScript code actually. So TypeScript supports object-oriented programming. So this is its biggest feature. Like provides some features which are classes, interfaces, inheritance, which are generally found in the high-level languages like Java, C Sharp, C++. So you will find those features in the high-level languages, but TypeScript also provides that. So these are some beneficial features which you apply in your development, then your code will be more error free and a little bit faster and more proficient, you can say that. So that's why we should use TypeScript actually, and TypeScript is nothing but a JavaScript with some additional features. So you'll understand how we can write your JavaScript TypeScript, sorry, and set up the environment in the next video. So let's meet in the another one, and thank you for watching this video. If you have any doubts, so you can comment down and let me know what is the doubt there. So thank you for watching. Bye bye. So hello everyone, in this video I'll be telling you how you can set up the environment for writing TypeScript code. So for executing a TypeScript code, we need first Node.js environment. What is actually Node.js? It is just a JavaScript runtime environment which allows us to run the JavaScript code outside the browser. So basically we cannot write TypeScript or JavaScript outside the browser. So that's why we need this Node.js environment so that we can write our JavaScript code or basically the TypeScript code outside the browser. So we'll be doing that in this video. So you can install Node.js for any operating system. I'll be going with this Windows installer. Actually, I have already downloaded an MSI file for Windows and I have installed that. You just need to click on next, 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 and you have to install that. Then you will be able to write Node.js commands. So the first Node.js command you have to implement is you have to go to CMD and now you have to write npm install. Make sure you have already installed Node.js by writing node-v. So you'll be seeing that version. In my case, it is 14.17.0. So in your case, it might be anything. So if it gives you this version number, then you can think of that it is installed successfully. So now I'll be installing TypeScript globally. So you have to write npm install dash g. For dash g is for globally. You want TypeScript to be installed globally. That's why we are writing G. And then you have to write the library name, which is TypeScript. And then you can press enter and that will be installed. After doing that, your basic setup for TypeScript will be installed. And now you have to start development in an text editor. So I can use this Visual Studio Code, which you can also download it by going into their official website, which is Visual Studio. You can write download Visual Studio Code. So you can go to this website code.visualstudio.com and slash download. You can download the file according to your browser or according to your operating system, and then you can install that. This is a great text editor or coding editor for writing web development and programming languages code. So you can install this and you can open this in any of your directory. And after opening that, you can create one TypeScript file. In my case, I will be creating the TypeScript file. For example, let's write first dot ts. The ts is the extension for a TypeScript file. So make sure you add this dot ts in case you are writing a TypeScript code. So you have to write this first dot ts, and after that you can write your TypeScript code in here. So let me just write var message, anything I can write, and I can assign the value hello world in here. And after that I can console log this. So we are just writing hello world code inside this. So I can just compile that, or I can use that variable. So this is kind of similar to JavaScript, but you can see that I have added this type, which is string. So it will only store the string in this if I reuse this variable. So I can only store the string type of value in this. So this is type. And then I'm console logging this. So let me just save this file. We'll be understanding about types in the future videos. So let's compile this. For compiling this TypeScript file into a JavaScript file, we'll be needing this command tsc, which stands for TypeScript compiler. And then you can write your file name, which is first.ts. TS is the extension. And then you can press enter and you can wait while it generates a JavaScript file for you. So you can see that it generated one JavaScript file. Inside that you can see it has changed the code, and whatever we have written down in this TypeScript file, it is uh, compiled down to a JavaScript file and changed the code into JavaScript. This TypeScript is converted into this JavaScript file. Now we can use this TypeScript file. Now we can use this JavaScript file to run the code which is inside there by using node environment or node command. Node first.js, I can write that, and whatever there will be, that will be actually compiled, and it will show you whatever inside that, or it will print out the command which is hello world. So this is your first TypeScript command or TypeScript code which you have written, the hello world command or the program hello world program you have written down. And whenever you create a TypeScript file, it always generates a JavaScript file, and then we serve that JavaScript file if anywhere we want to serve that. So that is the basically the working of a TypeScript file. So we just write a TypeScript file and we create our code inside this file, and then we compile down this into a JavaScript file, and then we run this code which is inside this JavaScript file. So this is how we start development and write our code in TypeScript, and that's it I wanted to tell you in this video. And in the next video, I'll be telling you about this type, what this actually type is. So we'll be understanding what type is, and let's meet in the another video. Thank you for watching. So hello everyone, in this video, I'll be telling you what is types in TypeScript. So we'll understand this term, what are types, and how do we define that into TypeScript. So what are types? So the type system represents the different types of values supported by the language, or like the TypeScript supports which kind of data types you can say. In TypeScript, how can we set the types of a variable or a function, or in a function or a for the parameters, how can we set the data types? These types are like defined into TypeScript. So how you can work with that? So the type system checks the validity of the supplied values, whatever will be supply the value, whether it matches with the type we have defined or not. That is type checking that happens in TypeScript before they are stored or manipulated by the program. So before they are stored or manipulated, the TypeScript will check whether the type is matching or not to the type which we have defined. This ensures that the code behaves as expected, so there will be no logical errors. The type system further allows for richer code hinting and automated documentation too. So it allows our code to be more proficient and a little bit easier to hunt down the problems where the logical errors are causing, like by which the logical errors are causing. So we can understand that as well if we add the types in our TypeScript files. So I'll be telling you this in a practical example as well. So don't worry, you'll be understanding all this in the practical manner as well. Let's understand the basic theory first. So how many types are there in TypeScript? So the first type, like when we don't have any types, so we have any value to set. Like in normal JavaScript as well, we don't have any value set. So the type of that variable is set to any. Like we can store any type of data in that. So that any type of type is defined into two categories. The first category is built-in types. So like built-in types, I have made a typo there. So built-in types it has there. So built-in types are those types which are understood by the TypeScript language. So the TypeScript can understand that what we have defined. So they are number, string, boolean, null, undefined, and void. So these are the some built-in types which are understood by the TypeScript. Whenever we define these types, so that is understood by the TypeScript, and TypeScript can take decision according to the type to in a function or in anywhere we have defined. So after that, the second category of types in TypeScript is user-defined types. So these are the types which we can define. For example, we can define that it should match this class or tuple, array, enums, interfaces. We'll talk about this in the later video when we'll be learning object-oriented concepts in TypeScript. So we'll understand that in the later videos. So let's understand built-in types first. So the built-in types has the first one data type, or the first data type in types is number. The number, for that we need to add this keyword which is number, and then it will store all the numbers which are like from the decimal, from the integers or anywhere we have to define the type number to that variable or to that element. So we have to define that, like the number we have to define. It contains like all the numbers which are there, like the decimals which has points and the integers as well. So there is no separate integer data type in TypeScript. Only the number data type or the type is enough for all of the numbers, like which are there, like the decimals, integers. Okay? So that is for that. So the other type is string. It has string keyword which we have to like assign when we are creating the data type, or like when we are defining the data type inside the types inside the TypeScript. So then that will only allow the variable to store the string values as like number. It will only allow the numbers to be stored, like the decimal numbers or the integers or the fractions. But the string data type or the type will only allow the variable to store only the string of characters. So that is its point. So the other data type is Boolean. Boolean will allow only the logical values which are true and false to be stored inside that variable. And also the other one is void, which is kind of like when the things are not returned, like anything we don't want to return from a function, at that time we define the type of that function as void. So when the function doesn't want to return anything, so then we'll define this void. And the other type is null. Null, for that, it is kind of a variable, you can say, or it is kind of a value that is absent, like that is not present. We are deliberately saying that nothing exists. So for that, we are just creating this null uh, data type. So it represents an intentional, which means we are deliberately telling that absence of an object value, like nothing exists. So it null doesn't mean, null means nothing. So you can consider that. So for that, for this nothing word, we have defined this type. Whenever a variable is returning you null, so it means it is storing nothing. So the other one is undefined. Undefined denotes value given to all uninitialized variables, like the variables which are not assigned any value. So it will store by default be stored undefined. So all the uninitialized variables which are not initialized, so that will get the automatic value of undefined. This is the type available in TypeScript as well. So it is kind of a similar thing in JavaScript as well. So, but we cannot define the type by ourselves. That happens in TypeScript only. What is the difference between null and undefined? Like they both are like kind of similar, but they are different in a way that null is having a value which is nothing, but undefined is not having any value. So let's understand what is this. So the null and undefined data types are often a source of confusion. The null and undefined cannot be used to reference the data type of a variable. They can only be assigned as values to a variable. So we can only assign the value to it. We cannot declare the data type in TypeScript. Like we are not declaring a data type as null or undefined. It is automatically taken care, or like we are, these are the values are assigned which are automatically assigned. Or null we can like by default null is not assigned automatically, only the undefined is assigned. We can assign the null value, which means nothing. However, null and undefined are not the same. A variable initialized with undefined means that the variable has no value or object assigned to it, while null means that the variable has been set to an object whose value is undefined. So when we are assigning nothing to a variable, then it will get the value of undefined. But when we are assigning null to any variable, it means we have assigned a value which doesn't have any value, or which is undefined. So actually, in both the cases, one thing is different, that in the undefined case, whenever a variable is returning you undefined, it isn't having any value. Like we haven't assigned any value. It is given by the language automatically. So we haven't given it any value to the variable. But when we are getting the null from the variable, that means that we have assigned a value to that variable which has nothing. Like the null is called nothing. It doesn't have anything. It means. So in null case, we are assigning the value to nothing, but in the undefined case, it is automatically assigned by the language. When nobody assigns any value, then it will take the undefined value. We'll understand both the terms in practical manner as well. So let's meet in the practical video of types. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you understood something, and we'll meet in the another one. Thank you. So hello everyone, in this video I'll be telling you how you can work with the types. So actually we have seen the theory, and in that we learned about many types, many built-in types like the booleans, numbers, strings. So let's practically work with them. So in the earlier video, when I shown you how you can write your first hello world program in TypeScript, so I added this type which is string. So what this means is that it will only get the type of string, not I cannot assign the number after this variable. Like if I try to assign any number, then you can see that it is my ID is also giving me error that type number is not assignable to type string. And still, if I execute this code, then you can see that in the compiler, I'll be getting one error. Let me just show you that. Or okay, I didn't save that. Let me just save it and recompile that. So you can see that it is giving me one error that this number is not assignable to a type string, because I have assigned this variable a type which is string. So I can only store the variables whose or the value which are string, not the number. I cannot set the value to a number, or this variable cannot get the value of a number or any other type if I've added this string. But if I don't add any string, then it will get the any value. It will get any type of value. We can store any type of value. That becomes problem when we are working with the some functions. For example, if I create a function which returns two numbers, for example, add is a function name, num1, num2 are the parameters, and I'm just returning both of them. If I return both of them, num2, and if I just store that into a variable result, and if I call this function add, and if I just pass some number, and if I console log this result, and let me just save it, and if I just recompile that file, that TypeScript file or that .ts file, it will generate the updated JavaScript or the updated JavaScript code in first.js. And now if I just run it with not first.js, if I run the JavaScript file, then you can see that console log is logging out the 7 because I've passed the 2 and 5, which is like returned after the addition. So I can return that, like I can get the data, but no problem is there, right? But if I pass this 2 as a string, so we'll not get the desired result, we'll not get the 7, but we'll get the concatenated result of a string and a number, which is 25. So let me just recompile that. So right now, no type is assigned to the parameters. That's why it didn't give me any error. If I just start that file, so you can see that 25 is returned, but that is not the desired result. Sometimes it happens when we are working in some functions which requires the type to be checked, and the type should match the number because we want the numbers to be like added. So that's why these types matters in those cases. So how can I like check, add a type check where it checks that the value given to this function should always be a number? How can I add that? For adding that, TypeScript allows us to add the types in there. So I can specify the number type here, that it will get only the number. And if I just save this file, and if I just recompile the first.ts, then you can see that I'll be getting one error, same as previously. So you can see that argument of type string is not assignable to parameter of type number. So the parameters are of type number, but we are passing the value as string. So that's why it gave me one error that the types are not good. So you should change this to number. So this kind of error will only be generated inside the TypeScript files before compiling that. So it helps in the development when you are when you are working with the large code, and in that you want the types of parameters or the variables to be strictly checked. So at that time of development, you need to use TypeScript, and that allows us to write the cleaner code. And if the error is there in types or anywhere, then it will give me the error. But if I directly wrote this code in JavaScript, then it will not give me any error, but we'll get the unexpected results, or will not get the desired results. So those kind of errors are logical errors. So it solves the logical errors when we use TypeScript. So this, how can we solve that? One solution is that if you try to add this plus against the string, that you can, on like that way you can also solve this, or you can directly remove the double quotes or the single quotes, so it will only get the numbers. So if I do that, so now you can see the errors are gone. And if I refresh that node first.js, then you can see that it is now giving me the 7. I can also add in here if I do that, so it will still be that 7, because this plus changes that to a number, and we are passing a value to a number. Or you can remove simply the double quotes or the single quotes which you have passed while adding the function or while calling the function. So this is one way to use the types. You can also change this number to a boolean, to a string, anything you want. So we'll be doing that practically in the projects when we were working with TypeScript and React. In that we'll be working with more types. So I wanted to make you understand that how this type actually works, and like why do we use that. So I hope you understood something, and we'll meet with the another concept of TypeScript in the next video. Thank you for watching. Bye bye. So hello everyone, in this video I'll be telling you how you can define types in an object. So object in JavaScript and TypeScript are similar, but in TypeScript we can define the types of objects, or the data types of the properties which we'll be storing inside an object easily. So like let me just create a simple object first. So that object can be student, and inside that I can specify the name. Let me just specify the name to anything. Let me just write Raj, and after that I can specify the class. Let me just write a number here, and then after I can write is male in a, so let me just write true, because Raj is a male name, right? So for now I've just created this student variable. If I just console log this out, if I just console log student dot, let me just write branch here. So you can see that it is telling me that this property doesn't exist on this type of object. Or if I go to this object, and then if I inspect this object, right click on the I hover on that, over that object, so you can see that it is telling me name class is male, but it is not telling me the value of the data, but instead it is telling me the type of the properties which I have defined inside that object. So what is that actually? So in TypeScript, when we define a object, before that we have to define the uh, types of properties in which we'll be storing the data. For example, name is a string, so it is saying that a string should be there, or string type should be defined there. And if a class is there, then class is a number, so number should be typed there. So this is how like we are doing. But if I just normally console log a class, then we can do that. If I console log that, and if I compile that and run that, let me just compile it and run that. So you can see that 10 is printed out, but it was just a normal object which you can specify in JavaScript as well. So what is the difference between a TypeScript object and a JavaScript object? Actually, in TypeScript object, we can define the type of an object. But just doing that, let me just write the properties and the type here. So in while we in JavaScript, then we have to define the properties and the value pair. But in this, we have to specify the property and the type of the data which we want to store in that property. So that we need to specify in that. So let me just write a string in here, and then you have to add the semicolon and the type for class, and then I have to write the number because it is a number type, and then I have to write the ismail, and then I can store boolean there. So this is how we define the type in TypeScript for objects. So if I just do once again, so no change will be there, but we have made it strict. So now we can store the data or update the fields data with a specific type. So now these variables are just just like the others, but inside an object. So if I run that, the same command will be there, or the same output will be there. If I just reassign the data into student dot, let me just write name and try to add one number in here. So you can see that it's still giving me one error, that number is not assignable to type string. So only type string can be assigned to this property, which is name actually. So we can only assign the string. If I store it into a double quotes, then the error is gone. You can see that. So this is like how we can define the types in an object and store the multiple variables in one object. We can define multiple variables and store the data. So this is how we define types in objects. So I wanted to tell you this one, and in the next video I'll be telling you more about that, about the types and other things. Let's meet in the another one.